you doing, guys? How many of you have had a coworker that just talked too much? They would tell you their whole life story, tell you all their problems, and this is the first 5 minutes after you've met them. One thing I could never get people to understand is keep your personal problems to yourself. Although on occasion you can make a good friend at work, your coworkers are not your friends. And a lot of times they're your competition. And they listen to every little thing you say and eventually may use it against you. One thing I've always avoided were company parties, company cookouts, or gatherings with your coworkers, because a lot of times they don't end well for somebody. See, unfortunately, when you're in a party situation, you have a few drinks, you get a little comfortable, you start talking a little bit freer than you would at work. Well, so you got a Christmas party, and you see the boss. Well, you've had a few shots, you're feeling a little comfortable, and you're feeling a little bit familiar. We're off the clock, we're all friends here. You start saying things. Now, your boss is taking notes on everything you're saying, and you're starting to piss him off. And I had a friend who did this some years ago, and I nudged him and I said, dude, you might want to back it off. And his response was, we're not in work, I can say whatever I want. It didn't dawn on him. We are not in work now, but come Monday, we're going to be right back in work. Well, within the month, he was out of a job. Didn't think it was going to happen, but it did. I stopped going to my company gatherings. Not that I talked a lot about me, but my ex-wife did. So we didn't go to my company gatherings anymore. But we did go to hers. They weren't much fun. She was with a bunch of office people that were really sticking the muds. So I was not big on company get-togethers. Some 30 years ago, when I moved to Florida, I got a job in a waterfront restaurant. They had an outside bar right over the water. Really fun place. Although I didn't socialize with too many of my coworkers, I talked to a few of them on occasion, but I really wasn't friends with any of them. I made the mistake one too many times of sitting at the bar after work, and on occasion I would get trashed. Well, when I was younger, I did like to party. I probably wouldn't better off keep it out of my place of employment. The unfortunate thing, all my coworkers were witness to this. On many times, I would leave the bar with a different girl, and they were taking note of this, and they would always be the jokes the next day. And this eventually caused some problems. So after I left that job and I got another job, I said, you know something? No more drinking at the bar. Had another job in another waterfront restaurant. Oh, a friend of mine, he was not a happy guy because he was terrible with women. He talked me into sitting at the bar with him. I didn't realize why at the time, but there was a new bartender, and apparently he had the hots for her. I don't know why, because she had teeth that looked like a can opener, but he had a mad crush on her. So I said, okay, I'll sit with you. We'll have a beer, and I'm getting the hell out of here. I was tired. I worked a long-ass day. Well, it looked like he wanted to start a conversation with her, but didn't know what to say. He really was not, his social skills were terrible, and he was not very good with the conversation. Well, I got the sense that he was going to say something stupid, and I'm looking at him. He looked like he was trying to swallow so he could speak, and I'm like, dude, don't do it. Not now. Not now. Then he said it. Will you go out with me? Well, I mean, I was embarrassed for him. I put my head down, and she gave him the usual answer and said the one thing you don't tell any guy. Oh, you're a really nice guy, but... Well, his bubble was burst. And I talked to him after work, and I'm like, dude, the timing was off. And he says, you mean I blew it? And I says, yeah, you did. I mean, first of all, you didn't even strike up any conversation. He's kicking himself and he's mad at himself. I said, dude, I told you not to say it at that time. The timing was so off. But he just didn't understand. And I'm like, dude, you'd be better off not having any drinks after work. Not here anyways. Go somewhere else and have them. But nonetheless, some people just like to party at work, and it never works out well. I've seen more people lose jobs for that because, like I said, they get a little bit too talkative. I found this out pretty damn quickly about the JW gatherings. I got familiar with those pretty much from the get-go, soon after I started studying. And the first one I didn't notice too much because my Bible teacher would not leave me alone. He's parading me around like I'm some sort of friggin' trophy. So I really couldn't get to talk to too many people. Soon after I found out, they were nothing more than extended meetings. How many times can you talk about Jehovah? From start to finish, and they couldn't understand. As a matter of fact, I really ruffled some feathers when I said, you don't have to talk about Jehovah 24/7. I got the shocked look. Diversify the conversation, make it interesting. I mean, you might as well be back in the Kingdom Hall. Well, as time went on, the invites started slowing down, and I stopped accepting few of the invites. I apologize, guys. I got to get me some more coffee. There were a couple of the guys that were kind of fun to hang out with, and they liked to hang out with me because we talk a lot after the meetings. And I hadn't been to a get-together in quite some time, but a couple of the guys wanted to go out and shoot some pool, go out for a few drinks. I figured, hey, what the hell? So I did. Now, I was a lot older than they were, and my partying days are well behind me. I don't party much anymore. I have a few beers and I go home. I've got a six-pack that's been sitting in the fridge now for 3 years. Well, we went to one place. We shot some pool, had a few beers, had some dinner. A couple of Bethelites showed up that they knew. This is when they started drinking the hard stuff. These are the Bethelites now. They started getting a little bit rambunctious, so I said, about time Vinny go home. This had happened a couple of times. After the guys had a few beers, they wanted to have the hard stuff. And before they started drinking the hard stuff, I would always end up going home. Come to find out at the meeting that it didn't go unnoticed. Kind of got wind that it must have been Vinny's fault. Even though Vinny wasn't there. Wasn't too long after that it was marked as bad association. At the time, I didn't know there was such a thing as mocking. But after a while, you see what happens. You put two and two together, and that's exactly what happened. These people, they were brought up in the truth. They wouldn't do that without some assistance. Yes, they can, and the Bethelites as well. But I started noticing, as far as the get-togethers, you get a lot of the same conversation. If they're not talking about Jehovah, they're asking questions. Now, this is something I touched on several weeks ago. The more questions you answer, the more questions they will ask. And they'll even get on the touchy subjects that they really shouldn't be touching on. So I started avoiding it. And I don't like being asked questions anyways, because if I want to tell you something, I'll tell you. Don't ask about it. But the thing is, the less you say, they start interpreting in their own stories and start adding to it. And they start judging you. Jehovah's Witnesses claim they don't judge. They are the most judgmental sons of bitches on the face of the planet. I got news for you. And I think most of you know that. I was pretty much a loner. I like keeping to myself. I avoided the get-togethers, the JW get-togethers. Didn't go to anybody's house too often. And when I did, I was usually the first one to leave. But nonetheless, people would talk. People would start thinking, Vinny must be a mad partier. He must be out whoring around. Because the thing was, once I was mocked, I was in the organization for another 6 years before I finally said goodbye. And they actually, in the long run, did me a favor. If you are a PMO, you want to avoid the JW get-togethers. Because the thing is, you may be able to fake it at the Kingdom Hall for a while. But if you're in a comfortable setting over somebody's house, you're going to slip up. Because you can only fake it so much. Eventually, I slipped up. In spades, I slipped up. And eventually, they knew something wasn't right. I was on restrictions for 6 years. And it was pretty obvious I had no intention of coming off of restrictions. I had no intention of going after any more so-called privileges. I had no intention of going back into ministry school. Matter of fact, I had no intention of being anything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. I was pretty much at the meetings on occasion, and then I'd leave and go home. And that's my advice to any of you who are physically in and mentally out. Avoid the JW get-togethers. Because much like those co-workers that are not your friends, many of the JWs at the Kingdom Hall are also not your friends. And this includes the many that were love bombing you in the beginning. And I found that out the hard way. And that's why I'm no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Anyways, I decided to keep it light this week, guys. But you all have a good day, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I will talk to you soon.